Knights Templar demon head. In 1307, as the sun rose over Paris, royal guards stormed monasteries, castles, and commanderies across France, arresting every Knight Templar they could find. Soon after, the Inquisition claimed to have uncovered a satanic conspiracy at the heart of Christendom's most elite military order. Among the charges, the knights had worshipped a severed, bearded head, an idol they called Baphomet. The Knights Templar were once the pride of Christian Europe, monastic warriors founded after the First Crusade to guard pilgrims in the Holy Land. Bound by vows of chastity and poverty, they wore a red cross over white robes and grew wealthy, managing gold and land across Europe. But by the early 14th century, the Templars had lost their primary purpose. The Muslims had retaken Jerusalem, and the knights, now financiers to kings, had outlived their political usefulness. King Philip IV of France, deeply in debt to the order, found an expedient solution: destroy them. On Friday, October 13, 1307, he ordered the mass arrest of every Templar in France. Under interrogation, many confessed to heresy and idol worship. Their supposed idol, a mysterious head named Baphomet, became the centerpiece of the charges. The descriptions, however, were wildly contradictory. One Templar claimed it was a wooden carving. Another said it was silver-covered and had 4 legs. Some described a cat with 3 faces. Others, the embalmed head of St. John the Baptist. One knight even said the head spoke to him, offering warnings before a battle. Curiously, investigators did find silver-gilt heads among Templar possessions, including one item carefully catalogued as head number 58. But this object doesn't match the lurid rumors. It's described not as a bearded demon, but as a finely made silver head with the figure of a woman, and it contained fragments of an actual human skull. Officially, such objects were reliquaries, or innate containers for the remains of saints. Yet in the accusations, this head was said to possess strange powers, to heal the sick, attract wealth, or even make crops grow. Dozens of knights were burned at the stake, including Grandmaster Jacques de Molay, who retracted his confession and died proclaiming his innocence. According to legend, he cursed both the Pope and the king as he burned. Within a year, both men were dead. Centuries later, in 2001, a Vatican archivist uncovered the Chinon parchment, a secret record showing that Pope Clement V had quietly absolved the Templars of heresy, but the crown burned them anyway. As for Baphomet, the name may have originated during the Crusades. French knights heard Muslim cries to Muhammad during the Battle of Antioch in 1098 and misheard the name as Baphomet. To medieval Christians, Islam was seen not as a rival faith but a heresy, and Muhammad became synonymous with devil worship. The Baphomet we recognize today, the horned figure found in tarot decks and occult art, has almost nothing to do with the Knights Templar. No medieval source describes horns or a goat-headed idol. The fearsome head that haunted the Inquisitors' imaginations was likely a misunderstood religious relic, its legend twisted under false accusations and reshaped over centuries. Mirror of Florin. In a museum gallery in Dresden, Germany, surrounded by telescopes and brass instruments once used to measure the stars, there sits a small iron mirror from the 16th century, no larger than a human hand. At first glance, it looks like a scientific tool, something ordinary, harmless. Then you notice the names carved into its surface: Hudson, Eric, Groman, and at its center, a single name: Florin. According to a forgotten ritual from the 15th century, this mirror is not meant to reflect a face, it's meant to summon one. The instructions claim that if the mirror is forged from pure steel, polished until it gleams like a sword, and used correctly, a figure will appear in the surface: an armored knight on horseback. He knows the past, he sees the present, and he can reveal the future, but only if you make him speak. This isn't folklore added centuries later. The mirror is real. It exists today behind glass in the Mathematische Physikalischer Salon, a museum built from the scientific instruments of Saxon court astronomers. And the ritual describing it comes from a book that was never meant to be found. It's known as the Munich Handbook of Necromancy. Hidden for centuries in the Bavarian State Library, the manuscript was decoded by historian Richard Keffer. It's a working manual, hundreds of precise step-by-step instructions from medieval conjurers. Among them are 5 mirror rituals. The most elaborate is devoted to Florin. The ritual begins with purification. The operator must bathe, dress in clean clothes, and prepare the room with offerings. Milk, wine, honey sprinkled into the air like bait. Then come the scents: aloes, white frankincense, myrrh, and the rarest ingredient of all, ambergris. They were thought to feed spirits, as if the smoke itself carried energy for the invisible. But the mirror isn't enough. A young boy is required. He holds the steel disc against his chest while a single candle burns nearby. The text describes how the child is guided into a waking trance. As minutes pass, his pupils widen, reflecting the candlelight until his eyes shine like an animal's in the dark. Only then does the incantation begin. It's an entire paragraph of harsh, breath-testing syllables labeled Chaldean. Historians now believe that was deliberate misdirection. It wasn't an ancient language at all, just distorted Arabic. And if the ritual succeeds, the mirror changes. The boy sees a knight on horseback, a squire standing beside him. At first, the knight doesn't speak, but the manual makes a promise. Repeat the ritual 9 times and the knight will grow bolder. On the final attempt, it will step forward and speak face to face. The mirror of Florin doesn't promise wealth. It doesn't offer power. It doesn't threaten death. It offers something far more dangerous, a glimpse at the future. And today it sits in plain sight, silent, polished, and waiting for someone who knows what to ask. The devils atop the temple. In November of 1519, at the top of a pyramid that had anchored an empire for 2 centuries, 2 men from Spain walked into a room they would later describe as hell. Hernán Cortés led the way. Bernal Díaz del Castillo, a foot soldier with an eye for the unsettling detail, followed close enough to remember the smell. He would later describe the scene in his chronicle, The True History of the Conquest of New Spain. They were standing in Tenochtitlan, the largest city in the Americas, a massive metropolis of canals and causeways. They'd entered as guests, nervous ones, escorted by priests and nobles up the steep steps to the Templo Mayor, the sacred heart of the Mexica Empire. Cortés said he wanted to see the gods. It was both a diplomatic lie and a reconnaissance mission. By this point in the campaign, Cortés had already burned his ships to ensure that conquest was the only path forward. There would be no retreat. He'd allied with the rival Tlaxcalans and walked into the city of his enemy without firing a shot. Days later, he would take the emperor hostage. But first, he needed to see what ruled from the summit. The inner chamber was dim. Diaz compared it to a hall sealed from daylight, a place reserved for priests. There, he wrote, stood 2 colossal idols on raised altars. The first was Huitzilopochtli, patron of war and the sun, armored in gold and feathers, wrapped in serpents, his body pasted with jewels. The second, Diaz insisted, was Tezcatlipoca, lord of the night and fate, his eyes set with shining black mirrors. Around them stood smaller figures, Diaz called diminutive devils, with serpents' tails. The walls, he said, were blackened, not by smoke alone, but by blood. Incense burned, offerings lay scattered. Somewhere nearby hung a massive drum whose sound, he claimed, could be heard for miles. To a Christian soldier raised on medieval demonology, the scene required no translation. Cortés supplied one anyway. He turned to Moctezuma II and said that the idols were, quote, evil spirits called devils. He asked permission to tear them down and place a cross at the summit instead. Moctezuma protested. These were not devils, he replied. These gods brought rain, harvests, health, victory. Remove them and the city would unravel. What followed was less theology than strategy. Diaz later admitted they debated, pretending to topple the idols just enough to frighten the city and settling for a safer prize, permission to place a crucifix and an image of Jesus' Mother Mary on the Great Temple. For a brief, uneasy time, a Christian image did stand near the gods, a symbolic takeover of the empire's spiritual engine. In the months that followed, this fragile truce cracked. Tensions deepened, then snapped during the Tlaxcatl massacre, and the city descended into war. Months later, as the city erupted, the Spaniards fought their way up the same temple steps. Diaz says they set the shrine ablaze, burning the chamber that once held the idols. Whether the figures themselves were consumed by fire or dismantled in the destruction that followed is uncertain. They survive only in accounts like Diaz's. The temple itself was toppled soon after the conquest. its stones repurposed for the colonial city, its mysteries buried beneath the cathedral. But the image lingers. Two immense figures, one of war, one of night, staring out from a blood-darkened sanctum as a small band of invaders declared them demons, unwittingly lighting the fuse that would consume an empire. Seisho Seki, the Killing Stone. In early March 2022, visitors to Japan's Nasu volcanic zone stumbled upon a shocking sight. The infamous Seisho Seki, or Killing Stone, had split in two. A shimenawa, the ritualistic thick rope that once sealed its circumference, now lay loosely on the ground. Photos went viral. Panic followed. The demon fox is loose. This wasn't just superstition. The stone sits in a sulfuric hot spring field in the mountains of Nasu, where toxic gases naturally vent from the earth. Animals have been found dead near it, overcome by fumes. Warning signs surround the area. For centuries, the stone has been feared not just for its story, but for the real possibility that it could kill you. According to legend, the Seisho Seki is the petrified body of Tamamo no Mai, a beautiful advisor to the emperor in 12th century Kyoto. But she was no ordinary woman. When Emperor Toba fell mysteriously ill, his astrologers revealed a hidden truth. Tamamo was a kitsune, a nine-tailed fox spirit with the power to seduce and destroy. She fled, was hunted, and was ultimately transformed into stone. And now, after nearly 1,000 years of containment, the stone had cracked open. Geologists blamed rainwater and frost. But online, the reaction was fearful. Quote, "I feel like I've seen something I shouldn't have seen," one tweet read. Others asked, why now? Could the return of this ancient evil be related to the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, or the earthquake off of Fukushima? In some versions of the myth, a Buddhist monk named Geno once approached the stone and was met by the fox spirit herself. Instead of battling her, he showed compassion. She wept, repented, and vanished. The stone shattered, and its cursed fragments were scattered across Japan, but the largest remained in Nasu, still seeping poison. The site appears in Oku no Hosomichi, the 17th century travelogue of haiku master Matsuo Basho, who described a carpet of dead bees and butterflies so thick it covered the ground. After the 2022 split, Shinto priests performed Shinkonsai, a purification ritual. But unlike ancient exorcisms, this ceremony sought not to seal the spirit away, but to calm it. Local officials were limited in their response. Because the stone is legally protected as a cultural asset, it can't be altered or removed without national approval. The fox legend isn't uniquely Japanese. In China, she's called Daji, who helped bring down the Shang dynasty. In Korea, she's the Kumiho, eater of hearts. Across borders and centuries, the nine-tailed fox appears at moments of political collapse and social unrest. Perhaps the stone was weakened by time and finally split open. Or perhaps the spirit within finally managed to break free. Devil's Letter of Sister Maria. It was just after dawn on August 11, 1676, when the other nuns found Sister Maria Crocifissa della Concessione collapsed on the stone floor of her cell, her face smeared with black ink. An inkwell lay overturned on her legs, as if the writing had been done while she was lying on the floor, not seated at a desk. In her trembling hand, she clutched a single sheet, 14 lines long, written in an alphabet no one could read. She claimed it had been dictated by Satan himself. For more than 3 centuries, no one could prove her wrong. Born Isabella Tomasi, daughter of a Sicilian prince and sister to a future cardinal and saint, Maria grew up in a family where holiness was an expectation. Nearly every Tomasi child entered religious life. At 15, Isabella became Sister Maria and withdrew behind the convent walls of Palma di Montechiaro, devoting herself to prayer, fasting, and penance. But she soon claimed a darker presence followed her inside. Whenever she approached an altar, witnesses said she screamed and collapsed, writhing as if seized. At night, she claimed the devil spoke to her, and eventually he demanded she write. What emerged was a letter so strange that even trained scholars were baffled. At first glance, it resembled shorthand, the kind used by scribes or political informants. Not cloistered nuns. Its symbols formed an indecipherable tangle of Greek, Latin, Arabic, runic, and possibly Yazidi characters. Only one word was immediately legible: oime. According to convent records, Satan demanded she sign the letter. Sister Maria refused, instead writing "Oh," Latin for alas or "oh dear." The rest of the letter's contents remain locked away, a secret code, until 2017. That year, a team of computer scientists in Sicily, led by Daniele Abad at the Ludum Science Center, fed the letter into a code-breaking program, reportedly sourced from the dark web, software reportedly used by intelligence agencies. They primed it with alphabets. Maria may have known and analyzed repeating symbols to isolate vowels and structure. They expected fragments of thoughts. Instead, full sentences emerged. The encrypted text was a blasphemous declaration. God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit were dismissed as, quote, dead weights in some translations. The letter claimed humans invented the prophet, Zoroaster, and even God himself. Quote, the system works for no one, Basara. It said, God thinks he can free mortals. Perhaps now Styx is certain. The river Styx, the boundary between the living and the dead in Greek mythology, seemed in the letter's logic to await mankind instead of the promised heaven and hell. To modern researchers, the message resembles the fragmented but patterned thinking associated with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. Quote, the image of the devil is often present in these conditions, Abate noted, citing records of Maria screaming through the night, wrestling invisible forces. Yet the symbols repeat with precision. The code shows design and a deep understanding of ancient languages. Sister Maria's letter remains sealed inside the convent in Sicily. According to later accounts, she received 2 more messages from Satan, but refused to write them down. Whatever spoke through her pen, it never fully finished the conversation. Which artifact in this video do you think has the most believable explanation, and which one still doesn't make sense at all? Let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for watching May Channel. Like and subscribe to continue exploring the greatest mysteries of this world and beyond.